Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Longley's Line Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Longley. Remember to like, follow, subscribe on all of those social medias. Stephen Longley for me, Longley's Line for the show, Lightstyle Studio for the studio here. And as you guys know, we like to bring on guests from all different facets of the entertainment industry. And today is no different. Today I have Mr. Mathew Bonta.
Hello.
Matthew.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. Before we get rolling into anything we're going to talk about, go ahead and promote your socials, where you want people to find you, anything you'd like to promote, anything like that.
Sequelproductions.com. So sequelproductions.com will get you to my YouTube page, where all my stuff is. It's mostly like my podcast, but all my movies are there. Trailers, shorts, features. Just Sequel Productions, YouTube, also Instagram, Facebook. Facebook is just me, Mathew Bonta. Instagram would be Sequel Productions.
Nice. And where are you from originally?
I am from here, born and raised in Reno, Nevada.
Reno, Nevada. What part of Reno?
Stead.
Stead? Oh, okay. So way out there. And then when you're growing up, did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to do for a living? Kind of in this area.
Growing as a kid, no, but like I always watched movies. I was raised watching movies essentially. And I was raised by my great grandparents.
Okay.
And he was always like he had a huge library of movies. Like he was always taping movies on TV, for the kids out there. VHS tape, putting into a VCR and hitting record, and he would just.
All the kids are like, slow down. I don't know what you're talking about right now. I have to rewind it.
Yeah, no, it's a funny concept.
Yeah.
To think about in retrospect. But like he was always taping movies and I was always watching movies and eventually I wanted to write. Like, cause I read a lot. And so I was thinking writing books.
Okay.
Which was kind of what I was going towards, but then I got into theater and doing plays in high school.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, it was just kind of like melding that into making movies.
What kind of movies would he watch? Was it just was it westerns or classics or kind of what?
That classic, like everything, mostly classics, right? Because he was older, so like that was what he watched when he was a kid growing up.
Yeah.
So like I've got a real good background in everything from the start to now, but he would also tape new movies that were coming out, 80s, 90s, and so on. So like I watched it all.
What kind of like genre did he really watch? Was he kind of like a musical guy maybe or western?
I don't know. That's a real good question. Like his favorite movie was like Casablanca.
Okay.
Right. He liked Bogart, and Bogart was like a bunch of like crime, film noir movies. So hard-boiled detective stuff. He loved reading like Mike Hammer novels, if you know who that is.
I've heard I can.
Just the hard-boiled detective novels, like the pulps back in the 40s.
Okay. So a lot of the cigarette smoking noir
Absolutely.
Kind of stuff.
Hard drinking detectives. Which is, I mean, it makes sense because that's kind of like my genre of choice is crime.
Like a thriller, thinker, crime.
Like more like crime, kind of like what Scorsese does a lot.
Okay. Those are cool. I always like watching those old movies back and you kind of say, listen here, Dom. And those are fun where they pull out the big cigar. Like, see?
Always smoke, like everyone's chain smoking in those movies.
Yeah. It was like you never, like I used to smoke back in the day. And when a newer movie, Gangster Squad, came out, was kind of slowing down on smoking when watched that. And that's an old crime movie where they're trying to take down the rival, the big crime boss. And Ryan Gosling has a cigarette in his hand the entire time. Just listen here, Don.
Right.
Could you stop? Because that looks so inviting. Why are you smoking so much? Please stop. I kind of want to go smoke now. There's some simple because they're constantly
doing it.
Those movies, but nobody.
Well, back then you gave the actor something to do, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just like kind of standing there idly saying lines, they could, play with a cigarette and light it up over the period of the scene.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot like, with Brad Pitt, why he's always eating. in his scenes, it's because it gives him something to do while things are going on.
And sometimes that helps an actor.
I mean, have you ever seen like Ricky Bobby? You know, he's
Sure.
like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Where are my hands?
Yeah, it's the same thing when you're acting or doing something. If you don't know what to do with your hands,
Right.
Eating, having a pen in your hand, just kind of playing around,
Fidgeting, right? That's a big thing now.
It helps out a lot.
Absolutely.
Which you wouldn't think about, but then tell somebody to say a line and make it come to life, and it's like. So the thing about all this is, I don't know what to do with my hands.
You got to put your body into the performance too.
You got to gesticulate a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And make it more fun. What kind of books were you thinking about writing? Was it crime?
Horror.
Horror?
It was horror back in the day, you know, and it's kind of like everyone that kind of came out of my age group were like R.L. Stein Goosebump books in elementary school, and then graduating to like Stephen King. So like I devoured all those. So horror as a kid was kind of my thing, but then I just eventually went into crime.
Yeah, because you kind of had that little part in the back of your mind.
I really don't know why, but I like them. I mean, you know, you like what you like.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to explain why you like something you like. You just do.
Yeah.
Right. Like, why is blue my favorite color? I don't know. It appeals to me.
Yeah, I guess.
So like, you can't really explain the things you like. You just like them.
Yeah. So as you're going into it and thinking, all right, I'm going to write books, but then you find plays and theater in school, was the stage kind of the first love, or was it like I just like the performing aspect of it, and then maybe film was where you wanted to gravitate towards, or was kind of, because a lot of people will say theater is their first love and then gravitate the other way.
I think it all kind of fills that same pot.
Okay.
Like, because I don't really like acting now, at least in movies. I would love to like do a play, right? Because it kind of lives in the moment, right? You do it, you feel the audience, like feeling that audience vibe and that rush when they like it. You know what I mean? When they're laughing or they're clapping or whatever, like it's a good high.
Yeah.
So like doing that was like a weird new experience for me, you know, and the writing thing kind of came with like, oh, I'll write plays, right?
Okay.
And then we can do plays. But then after high school, like that just kind of went away. So I just like, I got a camera and started writing movies.
Okay.
So it's just kind of a natural progression. I guess it all just kind of comes from storytelling.
Yeah.
So whether that's like writing a book, writing a short story, writing a play, writing a movie, and then eventually turning that into something that people can watch and enjoy, it's about just telling the story that's in my head.
Yeah, that you want to inevitably bring to life and showcase what you had going in your head.
Essentially forever, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what I tell all my friends that, you know, in the movies that I'm friends with, is like, with this thing we're making, it doesn't go away, really. So, like, we can enjoy it now. Our families can enjoy it when it's done. Kids and so on down the line, you know, into the future.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, plays kind of come and go, and you just kind of forget about them and they're gone.
Yeah. It's much like, you know, Broadway shows. When they come through, you hear about them, and they're there, but then inevitably they can go away.
Right. And casts change on those too, right? On Broadway, you get the original Broadway cast, but then when they tour and they come like to here and they play like Pioneer, you know, you're not getting whoever, you know, Denzel Washington doing, you know, Fences or whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
You wanted Hugh Jackman in the musical. Getting somebody else.
Which is fine, not to knock on whoever's replacing him, right? Because, like, you know, they're not going to cast something if they didn't like the actor or whoever. So, like, they're still good. You're just not getting that kind of starstruck kind of feeling with who originated the role.
You want the big name on there.
Right. That, you know, that'd be fun too, but, like, I love watching plays as well. So, like, even if it's not Hugh Jackman, it's still good.
Yeah, I'll still go to that play and enjoy it throughout. But like kind of how you said, it can be fleeting in that sense where it's the play that it's getting put on, but it changes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
While film, that's the final cut.
Yes.
And even though it's the final cut of it, it's the one that lasts forever.
Right. And you won't get like, you'll always still be Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, you know,
Yeah.
in that particular movie.
Yeah. You'll
So.
always see Hugh Jackman and just fucking Hugh Jackman. It's awesome. So what was the first, after high school and going through it, what was the first film that you did? Do you remember what that was?
Like it's not really necessarily the first film. It's more along the lines of like in high school, I was making shorts,
Mm-hmm.
right? The post high school, kind of falling into the same kind of group
Mm-hmm.
of people who like movies and hanging out, and like we all kind of like the same thing. Like let's make a thing.
Yeah.
Which would have been maybe 2 or 3 years out of high school, so
Okay.
like early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And we just started writing shorts, you know, not just like, oh, we have a camera, let's screw around and do a thing. We wrote scripts and got people together and scheduled when we can get these people and created a linear narrative. That first movie we did, probably like Crime America, which was I think 2006. That was the first one we did. And we kind of kept doing it from there going forward.
Just like stacking on to that specific story, like kind of making
No.
sequels, or
Oh, well, that's yeah, I guess. Now that you put it that way, yeah, kind of yes and no, right? Because my production company is Sequel Productions, so and that was just a joke, right? The joke was like, oh, I'll call my production company Sequel Productions, and we won't do any sequels, right? It'll just be standalone movies, and that was in high school, right? 21 years ago now. But then after that, when we really got into it and started making the movies that we were kind of proud of doing and doing seriously, they're almost exclusively always sequels,
right?
In a spiritual sense. Whereas I like to create a greater narrative with my characters. So like, this movie's got 20 different characters. I'll take a couple of them and they'll pop into the next one and so on forward.
So where it's not necessarily a sequel of that one story, but it's following different characters, kind of like spin-offs.
Right. So like usually it's like cop characters, right? So I'll have cop characters that are the same cop characters in these other people's lives and these other stories. So yeah, the stories themselves aren't necessarily a sequel to the previous movie, but the characters are the ones who carry over.
Okay. Where it's kind of like an Easter egg, like the people that were in this one first film, and they're continuing on, going on it.
Right. And it's kind of like the hard-boiled detective novel where Philip Marlowe would be in like 5 or 6 different, detective stories, and he'd be cracking different cases. Like it's kind of exactly a lot like that.
Right.
We're discovering some things here. We're discovering some things here.
Wait a minute.
This is like a therapy session.
Like, so tell me about your dad. I'm like, wait, what? You're just figuring out all kinds of things. So you're keeping those characters in, and it started from that first movie, the
Crime America. Absolutely,
America.
100%. That's the seed that was planted that I'm still doing today.
So you had that original idea in high school?
No, that was what we came up with then, right? So that friend group, we just we'd hang out all weekend long, hit the video store. Once again, the kids who don't know what that is.
It's a Blockbuster, if you guys don't know.
Right, or Bradley Video for me out in Lemon Valley.
Yep, okay.
And we just grab a handful of movies and watch them all weekend long. And then we would just be like, well, we can do this, right? So, back then, like 06 was where that all started.
Okay.
With those characters.
With those ones, and now those characters are still going on today?
Yeah, for the most part.
More or less?
More or less, yeah.
That's interesting. So, when you kind of still have those characters, not necessarily making it a sequel, but sort of spin-off-esque?
Yeah, absolutely.
when you're coming up with the ideas, do you think of like building the world around each one, or is it they're kind of like from being a main cast to now they're kind of supporting, and your stories kind of go along from there, and they're just either there or are they bigger parts through each movie?
Great questions. It's more along the lines of who I have. Okay. Which people do I have access to? We enjoyed making a movie together prior to. Mm-hmm. I'm going to write something for them now, right? And they, they played this character in the previous movie. I didn't kill him off. So, like, let me throw them into the next one as the same character. Or like, I'm writing a new thing. Oh, hey, maybe I can fit this character in there as well. Okay. It's kind of like that.
Okay. Where it doesn't necessarily have to be on like the bullet board where you're like, it has to be this. It's like, well, maybe we can bring in Lacey back or something.
Right. It's not like that. And mostly the way I make movies and the way everyone kind of makes movies here in Reno, mm-hmm. Things change a lot. People come in and out, people move, right? It's not so easy to maintain like, hey guys, this is what we're doing next, and take the same group of 20 or whatever and push them over to the next one. Yeah. Whereas someone was super available once, you lose availability, and you have to be super adaptive to that. So like, oh, I was going to put, your character in the next movie. Oh, well, I can't. I got a new job, or I'm moving. So then that character just gets dropped out. Or sometimes I just drop that movie and write something completely different.
Mm-hmm. Where much like when something happens to an actor in real life and they have to write the character off.
Right. Yeah.
Or something of that nature.
Kill the character off in a TV show.
And then they say it in such a subtle line. What happened to Greg? Well,
car accident.
He fell off the elevator shaft. What? Anyway, and then go back into doing
absolutely
what they're doing just like that. Excuse me. And so, as you're figuring out the world that you're living in, do you was it by intention or kind of just by happenstance where it's kind of like a multiverse, Sandlerverse where everything's interconnected? Like, was that kind of the purpose of keeping everything together? Or was it just kind of, this is how it works?
More like this is just how it works. It was never intentional to do that, and it's still not intentional to do that. It's just, that was fun.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be fun again.
Yeah.
And if it's still fun, then I just keep going with it.
I like those ones.
Especially when, like, you screen a movie and people like, oh, I really liked that character. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, I'll just put them in the next one.
Let's keep them going. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
So, what after Crime America, what was the next idea that came out after that?
I believe what we did after Crime America, and in that movie we created the Detective Cheese, right? And Detective Dutch. And we moved, Cheese is kind of like the glue that came from that going forward, but he's not around anymore. Next would have been Dread and Terror in Salt Lake City. So there's like three of us back in the day for Crime America. It was like me, Patrick, and Melissa. And Melissa's like my ex-wife. So like she's not around anymore. Mm-hmm. Patrick's not around anymore. But Melissa would do the movies, and I'd kind of be there like helping to produce them, getting people together. I was more behind the scenes and also in the movies, right? Okay. So from Crime America would be Dread and Terror in Salt Lake City. And these were like hour-long movies, 45 to hour-long movies.
Okay. Sort of features.
Not quite a feature, not quite a short, but like, we were serious about doing them, and we took them seriously. And everyone we got took them seriously. Yeah. So, we went from Crime America to Dread and Terror in Salt Lake City, and that would have been the next movie we did. And kind of like the last that we did, kind of like that. Mm-hmm. I think that was 2007. And that's when like we all kind of start getting older and like moved out of our parents' house and got our own place.
Start
and
to grow up.
Well, I mean,
deal
not
with
like that. I don't want to put it that way, but like, got jobs, right, and had to pay bills. So the time wasn't so free.
Not saying grow up, but more
right. Grow out of doing these things.
Comes in
Absolutely,
and life hits you, and you're like, "Fuck."
Right. So free time like drops down. Right.
Yeah.
So we're only making them when we can instead of just always being able to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only gotten worse since then.
Yeah, it always gets worse. Where you're like, "This is what I want to do," but then I also have to have a day job or something comes in.
Unfortunately, this isn't the day job, but that's always been the goal, is like turning this into the day job.
Yeah.
To where we do have like, we can do like drop a 40-hour making movies a week, right? Instead of like 5 hours on the weekend or something to make a movie.
Yeah. When you have that free time to get it done.
Right.
And then wait for the production and everything to come in.
Right.
And I got to go back to saying, I love the names of the officers. Officer Cheese.
Right. And
Dutch.
Dutch is mine. Cheese was Patrick's. And, Patrick was Cheese. I think that came from an idea him and a buddy had where like, oh, we'll have a detective's ham and cheese. That never happened, but like Cheese stuck around. I know it sounds silly, right? When talking to someone who doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
But like, those group of people who do know who Cheese is, they're like, oh, that's Cheese, and he's like a shitty cop. Can I cuss on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on YouTube. We put it's not for kids. It's fine.
But Dutch was Greg, right? And Greg's always been Dutch, Detective Dutch.
Okay.
And like he's been Dutch now for almost 20 years, right? 18 years, 2006, right? We're almost in 2026, 2 years away.
Sometimes you got to go Dutch. Yeah.
That's a very Greg joke. That is a very Greg joke.
Had to happen. Just came to mind. But I was thinking too, because, my name's Steve and my niece couldn't say Steve. So I was always Uncle Cheese.
Oh,
for the longest time.
Gotcha.
She's like 11 now, and every time I do get to see her, she just goes, "Oh, Uncle Cheese, what's going on?" I'm like, yeah, it's Uncle Cheese coming through. So it just makes me laugh. It was like, oh yeah, it's Officer Cheese,
right?
And just those kind of names are so hard to come up with and make stick,
right?
Because like you think of just from like the writing standpoint. When it comes to this is the name that I have to bring to this character, and I don't want it to just be like, Greg Simpson. Like
I hate making up names.
John
I'm terrible
Smith.
at it.
Like it's just so basic, but you want something that stands out that isn't already in like the zeitgeist somewhere.
And it's only getting worse because there's always new stuff, and there's always so many names
coming up with stuff like. And then you have to go, oh, okay, well, let's bring back an old name. All right, Gaylord. Let's bring up those kind of, my wife just watched Showboat the other day, and the guy's name is Gaylord.
Oh, is it?
So they call him Gay. And you don't think anything of it, and then it just flows so natural throughout the entire thing, and you're like, that's such an interesting name as you think about it.
Right.
And I would imagine coming up with names is just...
It's terrible. I hate it. I hate it so much. And because not only am I not trying to double up on stuff that's already out there, which I don't sweat too much.
Yeah.
It's more along the lines of, like, I don't want to double up any name that I've already used in something I've done. Right. So I don't want, like, two Brads, right? So, like, if I put a Brad in a movie, I'm most likely never going to put another Brad in a future script.
Yeah.
Unless it's the same character.
Right, and you want to keep the continuity of it.
Right.
But then you think about the same thing. How many times do you meet another Matt throughout the day?
I almost never meet another Matt.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The amount of times I meet Steves throughout the day is ridiculous.
Sure.
Like, I'll work on a job site because I'm an electrician for my day job. So one of the main contractors, his name is Steve. And then we'll go to job sites. It was like, oh yeah, go talk to our guy over there. His name's Steve.
The journeyman Steve.
Another fucking Steve. Like, we've had it before where our three guys that are on our crew is Steve, Jason, and Cody.
Mm-hmm.
All right, go talk to those guys. You got to mainly talk to Steve, but if you have any other questions, it's for Jason. Like, what's the other guy's name? Oh, yeah, it's Cody. Of course it is. Like, there's so many, just the same names.
Right, absolutely.
And it's so hard because there's all the same names. Like, you can't help it.
Right.
And so as you're getting through, and now you've got what was the name of that lab? The Utah?
Dren Terra in Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City. So I had Salt Lake City. So what was the next one after that?
So after that, and that's where it comes in, where like we don't do anything for a little while, right? Because we're still working, other people are working, and scheduling sucks.
Yeah.
And we just kind of lived our regular lives there for a little bit, and then everyone kind of splits up. But then we kind of get like new friends, bigger friend group, and we're like, let's make another movie. Let's see if we can pull this off. And so what we did, my ex-wife, she like got laid off from her job, and she's like, I'm gonna write something. So she wrote what would be the first like feature-length movie that we do.
Okay.
And at the time, it was called American Zombie, and then we found out there was already an American Zombie.
Right.
So we changed it to Patriot Zombie.
Okay.
And we try to make Patriot Zombie. And we got all these people together, and we start spending that summer like reconnecting with all of our older friends that did it. But it was a shit show. So like we're getting together on the weekends at this dude's house who was the lead. But like they would spend a good chunk of that night like getting drunk before even starting. So we'd film what we would film, but then like people started like losing interest, and would lose actors, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, what we ended up doing was like scrapping it and just interviewing the people that we still had, and turning it into kind of like a mockumentary.
Okay.
So what we turned it into was the unmaking of American Zombie, and we would sprinkle like we edited all the scenes that we had filmed, and like every other like scene we'd put in interviews, right? Yeah. And we would kind of like, it's like half really what happened, and then half like, just make it funny, do it, say whatever you want about these people. Like if we would lose somebody, right, at a certain point, and we just like didn't have them anymore, just like say they got abducted by aliens or something, or like pretend, or not pretend, but like go off on like a weird tangent, like maybe Bigfoot killed him, or maybe he got abducted by aliens, or whatever. And
this was the last time I saw them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I took like one of my favorite quotes from that movie and turned that into the title of a later movie, but we can get to that. So
okay,
if we're going in a timeline of what I've done, I'll circle back around.
Let's keep it in the timeline then. So
I'll circle back around to it.
So mockumentary kind of comes into
right. So we had like 4 or 5 people left, and we just interviewed them and said like, how was it working with this person? When we went down to the beach and filmed that day, tell us how it was for you then. And then it's like, okay, now this is where we lost somebody. Tell us like about that.
Yeah,
and
they went surfing and the shark took them out, or something like that.
And so that's what that was. That was Patriot Zombie, and that was our first feature. We got like an hour and a half out of that.
Pretty good, yeah.
And then we made like another cheese movie, a Christmas one. So we did that's like the first and only Christmas movie we made, where Detective Cheese is like running around in a Santa suit, and he's a detective that's like always like snorting cocaine and getting drunk and shit like that. So he's running around in a Christmas suit, a Santa Claus costume for that short. And that's only like maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's still fun though. Like
yes.
Cocaine cop
It's
around.
the Christmas special. It's the cheese Christmas special. So like that.
And for those that know, they know.
They know. And that was the same year as Patriot Zombie. And then from there, we did Dutch. So we took Dutch. It was supposed to be a cheese movie with him and Dutch, and like lost contact with Patrick didn't know what happened to him. We were like ready to start filming, and like he just like drops off the face of the earth.
Sure.
So everyone that we have ready to go, we're like, okay, what are we gonna do? And I just rewrote that script. So that would be the first one that I've written since like Crime America. Crime America, the three of us each wrote a section of that. Mm-hmm. So this would have been the first one I've written, top to bottom. And it's like a 45-minute movie, that one. And it's just like, instead of being a cheese movie, it's a Dutch movie. And that was kind of like the last thing we did for kind of like that chapter of our filmmaking stuff.
Right.
Because from there, me and my wife at the time moved to Colorado for a year. Like her job promoted her and sent us to Colorado. Mm-hmm. So we like stopped doing stuff, right? And stopped doing stuff there. Me and my wife split during that time, and I came back, and it was like, let's all get together and make a thing, right? And this would be 2013. So that's where I feel like it really begins for me, right? So 2013, I get back together with like Patrick and Greg. It's like, let's make a movie, guys. So we came up with an idea. We bring all the detectives back together, put in some, see who wants to make a movie, write stuff for them, and I wrote that script, right? We all came up with the idea, but that's my first feature-length movie, right? Like 90 pages, probably like 80 to 90 pages. I like to do like a clean like 80 to 90. And the three of us took directing credit for that. But from there, after that, it's always just me writing, directing, producing everything since. But like that's what I call my first movie. Is Street Meets Pavement.
Street Meets Pavement.
Right.
Okay.
And we were like, this is going to be the last movie for these guys, right? The last Cheese and Dutch. There's a Boop in there too, and Jones. I played Jones. I was Jones in Dread and Terror, and like another movie. Boop was in the Christmas one.
Okay.
But we all kind of come back as detectives, and it's kind of like, let's close that book on those guys.
Yeah. Give them a good cherry on top.
Yes.
To kind of wrap up their stories.
Right, because it's all we've been doing is like these cheese movies.
Yeah.
So like let's write a cool end chapter to this guy. And that's what I did. I wrote that, and then we all kind of directed it, the three of us, and it turned into like a feature. We got it feature length. So that's what I call my first movie. Like when people ask me like how long I've been doing it, I mean I have. That's usually where I begin.
Yeah. That's where you started, where you were the one in charge of the entire thing.
I don't want to say in charge.
Not in charge, but like taking over. Or
taking over and making it feature going forward.
Right. So that's your first one, feature film, top to bottom.
Right.
Did it yourself. Now that you kind of close that chapter, Dutch Cheese, they're living their lives or not, depending on if you've seen the movie or not. What was the next idea that came from there? While this whole process is going on and you're putting the nice bow on top of the Dutch and Cheese stories, did you have different ideas already getting mulled over in your head of like, well, maybe we can come up with, we're going to do a storyline about this or something? Did you have other stories already coming? I've
never stopped writing from that point forward, and only features. I mean, I've done shorts. I've written shorts, right? But like, it has always been hard for me to write a feature-length script up until then, right? Okay. So that broke the glass for me as far as not being able to write features. Yeah. Like I'd write something and it always like begin and end at like 15, 20 pages. Like I couldn't stretch a story out. I don't know what happened. I don't know. Maybe just experience and getting older and getting more wise to how people write and just studying and watching, whatever, reading. So like the next thing I was thinking of was like this kind of post-apocalyptic movie, right? Okay. Never happened. But I mean, I still have that script.
It's an idea, yeah.
And it was kind of like a Wizard of the Oz, the Wizard of Oz, no problem. Wizard of Oz in the like post-apocalyptic world, right? There was like a cyborg dude. a mutant vampire chick, and gosh, who else was in that group? Oh, like this dude that didn't talk, and they were trying to get to a place to figure out like where the world doesn't suck anymore, like where the world's not ended. Like there's a place where we can go, where they have the resources and where we can live without problems.
Finding Eden in the wasteland.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. And that was what I thought we were going to do next, right? I wrote it and it didn't happen. And once again, like it all comes from like people being available, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it's always been, is like making a movie, the planets align during those like couple of months that we get to make it. And it's like, man, like everyone's on such a rush and a high. But then it's a hard fall. It's a hard fall at the end of those, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's so close together, and you get tired of each other after a while, right? And it's nice to get a break from people, and it's also like, oh, hey, I have my weekends back, right? Which is why it sucks that this isn't the job that we do.
Yeah.
Because then it wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? Like that's where I make my money. That's my job, right? And it's nice to like take a break and then make a movie, you know, a month or two down the line. But like it's like, no, I got my weekends back, summer's over, it's getting colder, you know, winter's coming, and no one wants to make anything, right? And you get that from everybody, like, oh, I'm busy. It's like, well, I didn't tell you when. Like it could be 2 years from now, right? But like let's start talking about it. So yeah, we didn't make that, and I'm like putting shorts together to kind of make like a anthology horror movie. I'm meeting new people who get interested. So like, oh, well, let me write something around you.
Yeah.
So like then I get the detectives back, story-wise in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm always available, so I'll just bring Jones. And I was Detective Jones. And I kind of wrote like a Detective Jones miniseries that would have been, it was like 120 pages, like 6 episodes.
Okay.
I'm like, let's do this. We didn't do that. But then the summer after Street Meets Pavement, 2014, I write God Salt. And even though I kind of closed the book on those detectives like Cheese, I bring them back.
I mean, sure.
Cheese comes back. Yeah, well, I mean, I had Patrick, and Patrick, so Street Meets Pavement we made, right? And then we screened it at the end of the summer, like the end of August. And he went off to LA to do a thing. But then that didn't work out, and he came back. So he came back, like, okay, you're back, let's do another Cheese movie.
Try it.
So I wrote like a Cheese movie, bring all the detectives back, every single one of them come back, as well as some new characters. And I even brought back a character from Dread and Terror in Salt Lake City that I never thought I was going to bring back, right? It was a character that my ex-wife had created, but like I had that actress, like let's do a thing, right? I'm talking to old friends again who we fell out of touch with.
Yeah.
My one buddy Casey was in a band, so like, hey, do you want to help do music for this? And like, so God Salt, like even though I call Street Meets Pavement my first movie, we used a bunch of like copywritten music in that, right? Because that's how we've always known how to do it.
Yeah.
But in the world of independent filmmaking and like everything else, it gets easier to make a movie and put it out there and get free stuff to use for it, like copy-free music, as well as a better outlet to submit to film festivals.
Yeah.
So the idea was Street Meets Pavement, we would start submitting to film festivals, but everyone was over it when it was done. We didn't go back and swap the music out. We're just kind of like, fuck it, we'll just leave it in, whatever. But I got a new camera for God Salt, and I got my buddy Casey to give me a bunch of songs, as well as make some original stuff just for that movie. And that would be the first movie that's all original front to back. For music wise, I mean, it's and directed solo, written solo. Yeah. It was all my idea, right? The previous one was like the 3 of us coming up with like, you know, story meetings, but this was all me 100%. And then all its own thing with music and everything else.
Yeah. That's great.
So kind of like 2 starting points, right? Street Meets Pavement and God Salt. And that would have been the next movie that we did after Stream Meets Pavement. So summer 2014, we all got together. We all made God Salt, and it's a lot of fun. Also with Stream Meets Pavement, that was the first time we'd screened a movie at like a theater. We screened that at the Nevada Museum of Art.
Oh, nice.
And then God Salt was screened at, it was like a music rehearsal hall. Casey, like his band had like a spot there where they rehearsed, but like they had a big thing where they just brought a screen down. We put chairs out. And it was great. Everyone loved that movie. So that was what was next. And then kind of like stops from there. Do you have any other questions in there?
No, just one that I thought about was when you're talking about the apocalyptic Wizard of Oz. I've always had an idea of being an electrician where it follows a construction site of all of the people the apocalypse happens, and it shows you have an electrician, a plumber, a framer, and like an HVAC guy, and it's one of each of them going through an apocalypse.
Separately or together?
Together.
Okay.
But they all have their own little weapons that goes with it. Like for an electrician, we bend pipe for the wires to go through.
Right.
And it's about this tall, heavy head. I'm like, imagine a zombie's running at you and you've got this thing in your hand. I just always think about that. So when you brought up like the Wizard of Oz, I was like, I've always had that idea.
Sure,
I think that'd be sweet. Excuse me. So for all of those, now you've got where it's not you're taking the reins, but it's you're writing, producing all of these yourself. You get a good review, or you get a good.
There was buzz. There was buzz around God Salt. Like people that I've never spoken to, or like reaching out to me on Facebook and talking to me about things. Yeah. Right, which was cool, weird, interesting, whatever.
Yeah.
On top of that, like we start submitting it to festivals. God, I don't remember what it was at the time, but it's gone now, and now it's just like Film Freeway.
Okay.
To submit to festivals. But when it first it didn't get accepted to anything at the time. It does later. But even not getting accepted by something, I was able to create like an IMDb page.
Yeah.
Which was something I've always wanted. So everyone that made that movie, suddenly they're all now on IMDb, right? So that becomes like my first credit is for God Salt.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's much easier to deal with now, right? Anyone going there, like even if they don't even have a movie, they might be able to put something on there. But that was very validating at the time.
That's awesome. So, well, you say too, after the last one comes out, you say there's a bit of a break.
Yes.
So what happens in between that break? You're already kind of riding that high of the little bit of traction that's coming from it. What happens with that break? Is it like, what do you do in between that?
From God Salt to the next movie?
Yeah.
People start falling out again, like happens at the end of a movie, like I mentioned earlier. But like, that was kind of a crazy backstory that I'm not going to get into right now. But I mean, like if you listen to any of my podcasts, I get into, especially on the commentary for God Salt that I did. But like people like fall out hard after God Salt, right? Like we're all tired of each other. We're all doing things, like relationships are changing in our own lives.
Yeah.
And like I get into a new relationship, like the woman I'm married to now, right? So like we get together and life just kind of happens again, right? Yeah. People get busy and people fall out and people lose time, right? Or lose time to other things. And, I'm still writing. Like I wrote, I think probably another couple movies in there, like a horror sci-fi movie I wrote that never happened. But I'm kind of focused on my relationship. It's new and everything else like that. And that's happening. So I don't do anything for 2015. But 2016, it's like, well, let's do another movie. And I've written a couple things since then. In fact, so with the next movie after God Salt was where I kind of become like a crazy madman writer, where like I get into my writing mode and I go start to finish. So I wrote Night Moves, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a crime movie about a dude that breaks down in a town and gets caught up in like warring groups of like I think corrupt cops and politicians.
Okay.
And kind of like a criminal gang, but like obviously the cops are more the bad guys than the criminal element of that, and he kind of gets caught up between the two factions.
Okay.
And since he's like nobody from nowhere, like they're trying to pull him on each side and work him on each side, a lot like the movie or the book Red Harvest, an old hard-boiled crime novel from like the 40s, because I really like that kind of story, and they've turned it into like Miller's Crossing is kind of based on that. Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis is a lot like that. There's a lot of movies where it's like two sides warring. Oh, what's the other one? The Clint Eastwood movie, Fistful of Dollars, which is also the Japanese movie Yojimbo, right? And like I hooked up with a dude that reached out to me after God Saw. I was like, let's make a thing together. So I remembered that and was like, hey, do you still want to do that? And so we tried to like audition people for this. It would be the first time we're auditioning people and reaching out, but like it went nowhere.
Sure.
Right. And I was like super bummed out. And it's like, if we don't find a lead for this movie soon, like we're just going to scrap it and I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
So I knew it wasn't going to happen. I could see it in the cards, right? That it wasn't going to happen. So I'm already starting to write another movie, right? So I'm rewriting Crime America, right?
Okay.
All by myself, a modern take, or well, modern to how we make movies now.
Yeah, more updated.
Right. So scrap Night Moves, write Crime America like really quick. And we start to make Crime America. And on that first day of filming, I can see in the cards that this isn't going to happen, right? Because I need people to be dedicated and on time, and some of those actors just weren't, right? Sure. Like people that I cast as a lead, like this isn't going to work how I want it to. So I scrap that and write a third movie, right?
Wow.
Like within like 2-3 months, like I'm writing a movie a month now just to get this something made.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why I didn't just give up altogether, but like that tends to be the story going forward.
Can't stop.
Right. So I write Street Toughs, right? And it's kind of based on this Japanese movie, Three Outlaw Samurai, which I really like. I'm a big fan of Japanese cinema. And that's the movie we make, Street Toughs. And that's kind of like a shit show production because I got people saying they're going to be in it. And then they're not. So I'm like recasting, just moving people around the board. Right. But, and like trying to build like a shack out in the desert. Like we put it in someone's backyard and like the wind knocks it over and it doesn't happen. So instead we take it and we build it in his garage. And we can control the lighting and the weather, whatever, in a garage.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about the weather. And
movie magic.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what we did. And we made Street Toughs with everyone who was on board from that first movie, Night Moves. Everyone who I knew I had, they're invested in me and what I can do. And I take those people, like their part gets bigger and bigger with each subsequent script, and we make Street Toughs. And it's not quite a feature. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long, which was a miracle that we got even that.
Oh, yeah. So
that was 2016. So that was the next movie. And then there's an even longer break after that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of the fallout of not being able to keep shit together that production year, right? Just like, doesn't seem like we have anyone that wants to do anything. So I go from like 2016 to 2019 is the next time that I make another movie.
Wow.
Right.
So then within that break, is it the same thing? You're just writing and writing and writing? Or is it kind of... Is it kind of, that break happens, you already put so much effort into doing those 3, 1 a month, getting that going, I could imagine that can kind of get a little tiring.
Well, writing? It's more tiring when it's like...
We're trying to make it happen.
No, like it's more tiring. It's I wouldn't say tiring, but it's like it's frustrating when it's like I'm writing a feature like script that goes nowhere. I think I write like the amount that I end up writing later on gets even worse.
Puts that to shame.
I'm like I like wrote like 6 movies in 1 year, something like that. Oh man. So with Street Toughs, and like I kind of rely on Greg to help me out with post-production. And Street Toughs had like a really long post-production, and I think it was just like everyone was kind of frustrated, right? And I was frustrated and like did not want to finish that movie, like edit finish wise, post-production finish. But I did, and then I handed it off to Greg to kind of finish that. Like it sucks editing. I hate editing so much. Because you already like spent the time to make it, and now you're kind of making it again, right? And it's a less like active process, right? It's not like where you're in the moment and you're filming and you're moving around, you're telling people what to do, you're acting. Now it's just you're just sitting there and watching.
More tedious.
Over and over and over. Yeah, I hate it. So like, and like it's just the movie like. I was happy that we made a movie, right? After, third time's a charm. But it's just like, it didn't quite go as great as it could. None of them ever do. Some are better than others. This one was like kind of bad. As far as like trying to get it made goes.
Yeah.
And it's not quite as good as I was hoping it would be. So like, it's like a year before we screened that for everyone that made it, right? It had a long like post-production process just because like over it, right?
Yeah.
And just so once that was done, once again, like now that you've screened it, people are like, well, when's the next one, right? It's like, you guys didn't want to do this when we made that one.
Yeah.
So I guess I start writing again. I got a couple ideas that I wanted to do. So I wrote like another cheese movie, but I hadn't been talking to Patrick. And I kind of talked a little bit about it with him then, but I haven't really talked to him since. But I did, like, because I had another final cheese story in my head, right? Kind of finish up that trilogy. Maybe one day I'll make it. I don't know, because I really liked it. I really liked this story that I made. I wrote that. Didn't happen. My brother helped me kind of come up with that, right? And like I don't really collaborate writing. It's just so hard for me to collaborate with somebody else because like I get on like you don't like co-drive with somebody, right?
Yeah.
Like there are backseat drivers, which is fine, but only one person's really driving, and I can see where I'm going, and in my head I know which lanes to change and which forks in the road to go down. But like my brother did like kind of help me with some stuff, and people do help at times, but really it helps me get from A to B. And when they're like over on a weird, like they're on number timeline over there, right? And I'm on the alphabet. But he helped me kind of get that one off and running. And then I wrote like, what was the movie I wrote? I wrote another movie that I thought I was going to get people together for. We did like Get Fiasco. Get Fiasco is what I was planning on making. And Fiasco is a character from God's Salt that we had fun with. And I liked that actor. And he played Fiasco in Street Toughs because like I reached out to him. I was like, do you want to do a thing? And so he's last minute as like a biker in Street Toughs. Street Toughs is where I begin my biker phase. I got this biker gang that I got permission to use from this podcast that I listened to. They create like their fans, like they're like, wouldn't it be fun if we had like a biker gang, but like it's super lame. That's just what our fans are. Okay. And they had like a patch that they were selling, like a big patch and a small patch. And I reached out and I was like, can I use this for my movies? I'm like, go for it. So like Street Toughs forward, you're going to see these bikers. In fact, Street Toughs, I created the character Weed, which my buddy Corey plays. And Weed is almost in like every movie going forward because Corey loves to do stuff. But Get Fiasco. Fiasco was in God's Salt, and I brought him back for Street Toughs. And because sometimes characters die in movies, my timeline is all wacky, but like it's up here. I know where they're placed in my timeline. But I wrote Get Fiasco, and we did a read through of that, but then it kind of fell apart. Didn't happen. And maybe I wrote a couple more movies after that, but then, but like I said, like 3 years, nothing happened, and it was kind of discouraging. I did help this animator write. He was trying to do like a 3D virtual reality animated like series.
Okay.
And I helped him write those episodes. I did that in there. That was kind of like a small little thing I did just for fun. And how are we looking on time? Oof.
We're good.
All right, sure. I got a place to be.
Oh yeah. So what we'll do here is we'll bring you back.
Yes, absolutely.
Now just going through the whole timeline of everything, listening to it, you have 2016, 2019.
This is a good spot to break too.
Goes until that little break. So you've got everything under your belt. Haven't even talked, well, with the production company, your Sequel Productions, before we do kind of put the bow on top as well on this. Was that always going on at this time, or did it not necessarily have a name yet? It was just kind of you figuring things out.
It's always been Sequel Productions since high school.
From the jump.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you've got your productions, you're going through. We'll stop right here, bookmark this. So 2016 to 2019, there's a break in between while you're kind of doing
life
knobs and bits here.
Yeah, like writing and
figuring things out.
But really just kind of like working and just doing the regular thing.
Perfect. All right. Well, Matthew, we'll stop there. We'll bring you back. We'll kind of go into more, talk about podcast and everything like that you've got as well. Before we get you out of here, go ahead and promote your socials again, where everybody can follow you. If you have links for anywhere people can watch the aforementioned movies that you already talked about, wherever you want people to follow.
YouTube is the best place to go. Sequelproductions.com. I own that domain, so it just redirects to YouTube or, Sequel Productions on YouTube. The last movie I made is Midnight Bloodshed.
Okay.
And that's a feature. It's on there. And other than that, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Mathew Bonta, or Instagram, Sequel Productions. But that's it for what I'm doing. I got a new movie coming out eventually. We're editing it right now.
Yeah, talking about it.
But we can talk about that on part 2.
We'll talk about that part 2. You guys know what to do. Look out for part 2. Follow Matthew. Follow all the Sequel Productions everywhere here. For us, Stephen Longley for me. Longley's Line for the show. Lightstyle Studio for our studio here. We will talk to you guys next week. Perfect.